machine learning, AI, all those things are here to stay. That is going to become the new normal. If we don't get ahead of this now, as a company, we're going to be completely playing catch up the entire time. We made a pretty hard stance about 2.5 years ago. We weren't trying to be the next .ai company or be Royce Geo, the experts in machine learning. No, it's just going to be an active part of what we do. It's not the only thing we do, but it's something we're starting to do pretty well.
Welcome to the Startup Defense. My name is Callye Keen. Today I have Dave Sterling of Royce Geo. Dave, you have a rich background inside agency as a startup founder, as a technologist. Really, really interesting what you're doing for GIS and the intelligence associated with these solutions. But before we hop into the tech stuff and how that's all changed, and you have some really interesting thoughts there, the question I ask everyone to get us started is, what are you passionate about right now?
Sure. Thanks, Callye. Thanks for having me. If you were to ask me 8 years ago, it's all about mission, and it still is very much about mission. When you're involved in a startup, it's really all hands on deck, me included. I was everything from CEO to janitor to analyst and everything in between. In growing a business very fast over the first couple of years, you're kind of juggling this people, mission, tech, hiring, all the things you need to do to run a company. Fast forward 9 years later to where we're at today. What I'm really passionate about is bringing in technology experts and really team improvement to really improve our ability as a company to execute. We have found, early on, we had one or two really primary customers doing some very focused work. As we've evolved over the last 9 years, we're still very focused. We know what we do. We do it, I'd like to think, fairly well, but we're starting to find that we have a lot of the same partners are all raising their hand with very much the same problem. And that is really understanding the national and commercial imaging layer, how to better utilize that, and moreover, how to get that information back to make decision much faster. So it used to be, hey, we had one, major agency. That was our primary focus. It still is today. They're our largest customer. But now we have several different DoD, COCOM components that kind of, quite frankly, are all asking for the same thing. So we are very much focused on improving our internal tech, bringing in more tech-enabled experts and leaders and experts to really get after the mission set. So that's really a focus for us. For me personally, has been team building. And that really comes with, as you're running a fast-growing company, is that overall just company improvement. How are you not getting out over your skis and growing too fast to where things start falling on the floor and you're making a mess of things? You have to stay focused, stay oriented, really understand your mission, your goals, which you want to be as a company when you grow up. So sometimes internally pull myself to where at both ends where it's we have to remain very relevant in the tech space. That's an imperative, very relevant in the mission space. But moreover, we have to keep and manage and maintain this company that really embraces new idea, new thought, is able to grow, is able to provide that experience for our employees. So we're able to bring the best of all things together. I've seen some other firms in our space that have done this very well. I've seen some that have grown, quite frankly, a little fast, and you could see the wheels starting to get out of a line and things start falling apart. Growth from a defense startup standpoint, I think we're out of the startup phase maybe at this point, but I argue with that internally as well. Growth for the sake of growth isn't necessarily always a good thing. You got to have that very smart, protracted growth on what are we really going to be great at the end of the day? And then moreover, how do we take those things that we do extremely well and how do we reposition, repackage those to help answer, in our case, the defense and intel community, those very light problems that are, scattered all over the DoD, COCOM, IC elements that, quite frankly, are all looking for to solve a lot of the same type of issues. I spend a lot of time, probably more than ever, staring at problems, really decomposing what are these folks when they're saying they have this issue, what is it that they're trying to get after and trying to do? There's a lot of thought early on, what is going to be the right implementation of people, data, and technology. Company our size, we don't have an endless checkbook. So if we're going to make a bet, we've got to make a very smart bet. And the way to do that is really understand what is the core problem they're trying to answer and try to address. And moreover, I mentioned earlier that those technical experts, I think there's a subtitle in there, practical technical expert. We could go and hire a lot of deep thinking PhDs that are very, very smart in their craft, and that's great. But when it comes down to it, for us to be successful as a business, we have to take high-end tech, high-end knowledge, being able to make it practical and be able to implement in a pretty short amount of time. And that's something that we've done extremely well. especially in the last 3 years when we've kind of inserted ourselves in this convergence of national technical means data and commercially available imaging and RF data, and really bolting that together to create this holistic collection picture of what are all the assets truly available out there to really understand a situation that could be 8,000 miles, across the globe. As a company, that's what I'm focused in. That's the direction we're steering the ship. From a personal standpoint, came up through academia, almost made the pivot in the military, got an offer to grad school, ended up getting a couple degrees in geography. So really understanding the geopolitical climate of when things are happening, like Ukraine, why are they happening? What is the 150 years of history prior to that? And really understanding from a tactical standpoint how history is a pretty good indicator of what's going to happen in the future. Spending a lot of time, trying to engross myself with as much information, both old and new. And really, I think that has helped me understand, from a strategic standpoint of really to look at, is this going to be an activity where we need to really double down and get behind because this is going to be a long, enduring, protracted event? Or is this something that's going to be a flash in the pan where, hey, we've got guys who can cover this over here, like the China issue or something like that. I think most would argue we're kind of in a war state today, almost like a Cold War kind of approach. Bullets aren't getting fired, but there is a lot of activity happening under the radar, if you will, where I think if you ask several 3- and 4-star commands, they're going to tell you today that we are at war. And this is something as a company we are going to invest in, not because we think there's just this financial boom behind it. No, this is a major, major national security issue. I mean, we see that we have partners, friends that are partners that are currently in the fight, if you will, that have a tremendous amount of need, have a tremendous lack of resource after spending 20 years fighting in the desert, pivot to a blue ocean environment. This is a completely different battle we're going to be fighting. And quite frankly, I think we've got a lot of work to do to get there. So for us as a company, those kind of regions, those kind of issues are something that we are truly doubling down on.
Yeah, I think it's a conflict of innovation, intellectual property, investment. It is a war of startups and technology and trade versus a war of bullets and missiles. And that's really interesting. I want to pull out, because you said a lot of very interesting things. So I want to pull out some points out of this. And one, traditionally, people would shy away from defense because they look at it as, oh, that's a slow growth market. We're looking at market indicators and the area is only growing at 3% or 5%. So that's not a really good startup focus for us. Now, I've found this to be demonstrably false because I know lots of people that have worked at large primes and then just started and have a $10 or $20 million company in a couple of years, which, maybe that's not this unicorn story of startups, but that's a very reasonable company to have because they have deep domain experience. They understand the problem. They probably in a past life were the person that had the problem. And so they're able to, without a ton of investment or a ton of startup hijinks, create a reasonable company. But from the startup world, they looked at it and said, oh, well, that's a slow growth. That's a business environment. It's not a startup IP environment. I think that that's changed and it's demonstrably false. I like your story of coming from that background, understanding the problem, and then solving it really, really well for one or two people, and then realizing that this is a lateral growth opportunity. It's like, who else is just like this? What other agency or what other group has a very similar mission but same problem? And defense is really great for that. Commercial industry, I don't feel is the same way. I wanted to kind of break that down. And if we can dive in a little bit into the tech, or like, what does Royce Geo actually do? What do you provide? And what are the problems around that space that you're solving?
At our core, our business, we are an advanced analytics firm. We have a very strong IT component as well that supports, large mission centers, making sure that the lights are blinking, the computers are working, because we're in the space where the fight is actually occurring today. But, what we are really leaning edge on is the advanced analytics component of that. Now, that's pretty broad and nebulous. Let me put a finer point on what that looks like. Spent, about 13, 14 years inside the mission space as an analyst doing geospatial intelligence and tradecraft, kind of the good old fashioned way. We were doing tasking collection, bringing information, making products, rinse and repeat. We saw an inflection point around 2013, 2014, where we were starting to really master how to do accelerated tasking orchestration, What that means is an event occurs, a model is kicked off, and then we go and collect something. And we were able to do this in near real time. It was being done in very, 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 very tiny sections of the build. And we're talking one or two people. I looked at that as a massive opportunity that, look, this is the way that if we're going to stay on top of the evolving landscape, we got to start looking at things differently. And that was really the driving force for me to say, okay, I'm going to step out and this is what I'm going to do different. And this is how we are not going to be just a good old fashioned run of the mill Intel company that, hires great people and provide great value added service on a button seat approach. We want to actually deliver solutions, and we want to democratize advanced analytics, because at the end of the day, there was only a handful of people that understood Python or how to build, sort of data models and things like that. We want to look at how do we make this, open up the aperture, get more people involved. How do we show that this is something that's truly scalable? And it's taken quite a while to get to that point. We kind of hit that point about 2 years ago to where the light bulb started popping on. Hey, this is something we need to really get deep and wide within our agencies and community and the DoD and whatnot. So that's really where the business has pivoted in the last couple of years. So again, started off looking at advanced data modeling and analytics, looking how it affects agile collection, looking how it affects how to do intel while you sleep. How do you turn a model on so as things are being emitted, collected all over the world by various sensors and activities? How are we able to churn that data and make sense of it in real time? Moreover, how are we able to do that when someone's not sitting in front of their computer between 0600 and 050 and 1500, business hours? That was the mindset we took as a company. And we've had some great examples of that when, the world went on its head during 2020 and we had models kicked off and then everybody was sent home. No one was in a skiff for like 4 or 5 months in some cases. We came back to where those models ran for 4 or 5 months and had troves of information collected while they were never in the building. That was extremely actionable, extremely relevant. And that's that Intel while you sleep model. So when we saw this happening in real time, we were able to start taking that capability, taking it to other places, almost right inside of our own major customer base and one of the agencies we support. And we were able to start replicating that, getting them to invest dollars into, hey, this is something we now want. Not that office has it, great, but we want it now. And so we were able to start replicating that out internal within one of our main customers. Fast forward, we stepped that out of the 3-letter agency realm into the DoD realm and used that exact same approach. Moreover, we're relying on government systems to do the majority of this work. What we invested in about 2.5 years ago, almost 2 years to the day, is creating our own commercial solution. Again, not to build software to go hang on a shelf and sell the license. We wanted to eat our own dog food. We wanted to create a system that was just like what we were used to using inside the government space, build it on complete commercial tech stack with a very novel language like Python. Everybody codes in Python. We didn't want to have anything obscure that only 4 people in the world know how to code against. And we built our own tech-enabled solution. And then with the emergence of commercial space imaging capability, RF capability, we saw a real opportunity to show the world we could do the exact same job you're doing sitting inside a skiff with highly cleared people, highly paid people. We can show you how to do it with a couple of smart guys, some machine learning experts, and some good data analysts, young trained data analysts, and do it completely in an unclassified environment. And that is exactly what we've done over the last couple of years. So now, present day, we're looking at the national collection layer, the commercial collection layer, and showing how those two merge together to create that complete collection layer. And then moreover, when you're working with groups that are very external at the edge, if you will, that aren't getting collection priority, aren't able to see, get eyes on the ground to see what's going on in the world, we're showing them a very cheap, fast, and effective way to look at targets overseas that they're interested in and do it very economically and very scalable. So that has been really our thrust in the last 2 years, and it's created the identity for what our company's become today. And then with that is, obviously all the great things like contract awards and things like that. But in the end, it comes down to your kind of part of your first question is why get into this? Well, there's no more important mission space than national security in my eyes. And I'm a little jaded because I've spent over half my adult life in the national security space. So really it was the only thing I knew. Moreover, as started really kind of growing this company, you see a lot of great things happening in the pure commercial landscape for other business sectors. We've been able, because we've got tradecraft practitioners and experts, they're able to grab those good parts and pieces that are out there and really show how to tech enable it and make it relevant and useful for the national security space. The big differentiator, when you look at a complete commercial startup, and I'm doing this, I'm selling these things in the commercial landscape, and now I want to do the great pivot into the DoD and IC realm. The biggest differentiator, the common denominator, is tradecraft experience. And if you do not have that in spades, that is a huge bridge to cross, and sometimes you can never do it. And I've seen plenty of great companies out there, great tech, PhDs, smart folks, guys with patents out the wazoo of technology we've all heard of, but they cannot make that transition because, quite frankly, they've never spent a day walking halls, or at least long enough to where they know how to take their tech, how to price it accordingly, how to implement it in a way that you're not swallowing a whale. You're taking nice little bite sizes until you get them comfortable with the solution to then make it work. And then moreover, how are you pivoting that tech and adjusting what that software and that managed service all really looks like to make it relevant for the mission that's coming 6, 7, 10 months down the road, not just what you knew existed as of today and 12 months prior. And that's one of the things I think that's given us a really distinct advantage, because the technology experts we bring in are practical experts, and moreover, they've got a long-standing history of working in tradecraft and working inside the mission space. So that's been kind of our secret recipe.
It sounds like an amazing recipe to me. I definitely understand where you're coming from, because we deal with a lot of smart, very technical people, particularly people out of academia that are going after calls for innovation, and just the lack of vocabulary or understanding this is what a contract would look like. This is how people talk about their challenges. This is what's pertinent to discuss right now versus how to develop that relationship. It's really just not there because it works in a little bit different of a way. But it's nice to see somebody coming out of that space and then leveraging commercial technology. I want to touch on that 2 years ago, building that commercial stack and making sure that you can leverage common programming languages like Python. Do you feel like that positions you better for now, where everyone is really interested in AI, ML? We have this massive surge in data analytics interest, whether you call that AI or what have you. We end up getting into a lot of interesting sensor applications, and whether that's like hardware, software, or some kind of data convergence solutions. So there's a lot happening in that space. But traditionally, nothing would actually occur because you couldn't get data from one place to the other, and it wasn't very actionable. And that really has to do with the way things were siloed and built. But if you're running the stack, what was the reasoning for doing that? Did you a magician enough to predict the mass growth of interest in AI, or are you just like, this gives us the ability to kind of develop our own best of breed solution?
No, I'm not going to call myself some great fortune teller, but one of the things I knew was always a problem from day one of being in the job over 20 years ago is you've got a scale and automation problem. You've got a tremendous amount of data scattered all over the place in different silos, if you will. And really, what tools or what central environment do you have to go and reach all of that data in disparate locations and then process it all at scale in real time through a lot of novel technology and things that are out there? There's a lot of good parts and pieces out there. And what we spent a lot of time doing was bringing all the best of breed stuff that we knew and understand together and to execute against missions. So for example, how do you look at 5 different ComSat, say EO and SAR providers? How are you looking at RF? How are you looking at AIS data? How are you looking at all this stuff that's commercially available coming into subscription? Oh, and then just scouring the good old fashioned open web for great information. In the past, that was armies of team collection managers, data analysts, data miners, all those things bringing all this stuff together. And you've seen that kind of evolve and get a little more streamlined over time. What we wanted to do is just put the line in the sand saying we are going to tech enable 95% of this. And we are going to build something that we can control the amount of data input. We can reach out to all the number of different data services out there, pull all this together in one centralized location. And then with good old fashioned data science, how are we building real actual models that can repeat at scale and in real time? I think if we tried to build this 5, 6, 7 years ago, the tech stack, quite frankly, wasn't there. We weren't mature enough to do it. Today, or at least, let me put it this way, with the resources we had at our disposal, other companies definitely have, and but they also venture backed and coming from a different starting point, I would say, that we were. We had to be very mindful and smart about our investment and how much we could really lean into. But we hit this really interesting inflection point about 2 years ago where, hey, there's a tremendous amount of open source stuff that's out there. The data is coming in waves size of, something in the North Pacific. This is an opportunity here. Oh, and we also understand in the mission space what they're asking for. So we weren't trying to create a solution and then go find a problem. We had a very, very ready baked problem. And that was, how do you leverage commercial satellite imagery, run computer vision, ATR detection, all those things against that, and report on that in real time. Now, that's one case study out of probably another dozen that we build inside our what's called Curve. That's our environment. Inside our Curve environment that we get after. And the point being is that we now have become vertically integrated inside a company to where we know how to harness all the commercial data. We've got, through our environment, ways to go out and get it. We can then process it all in real time, and then we can report all in real time, almost 100% man out of the loop in some cases. What used to be a very stepwise serial process function, we're now able to parallel process a tremendous amount of data, use lightweight code, use repeatable code, and moreover, we've made an environment that we can bring new data scientists into. We show them how to build functionals, how to pre-program a lot of stuff's already pre-teed up. They just need to add some secret sauce, and then they're off and running within the same day with their own new unique models to support their own mission set. In the end, we knew that if we were going to grow as a firm, technology was going to be a huge, huge part in it. And moreover, machine learning, AI, all those things are here to stay. That is going to become the new normal. If we don't get ahead of this now as a company, we're going to be completely playing catch up the entire time. So we made a pretty hard stance about 2.5 years ago. We weren't trying to be the next .ai company or be Royce Geo, the experts in machine learning. No, it's just going to be an active part of what we do. It's not the only thing we do, but it's something we're starting to do pretty well.
Yeah, I think baking in AI is the best approach. I get into these arguments all the time as people right now, they think that AI means ChatGPT. I'm a tech guy, right? I'm a product developer, tech guy, and been dealing with AI and ML for a really long time. But the example I give them is, do you have a backup camera in your car? It uses machine vision. It's in everything. There's 10 different ways that it's in your iPhone before you install an app, right? Great products bake in technology versus they are just a technology layer. Your product and your offering, it really reminds me of this term that I keep seeing crop up a little bit more and a little bit more, intelligence as a service. And the premise being that the security landscape, or the way that people think of remote security and dealing with data, has changed enough where instead of me siloing out these solutions, and I'm a big fan of processing information at edge and having actionable intelligence as close to being able to use it as possible, but it's not always theoretically something that can be done, right? Not everybody's carrying around transit cases of compute gear and can crunch numbers wherever they are, right? It's improbable. But the idea of being able to leverage a consolidated resource and then be able to expand that resource, we can spin up GPU clusters. It's like, well, I don't want to take that on the other side of the earth and have to do that tomorrow because I have a mission in XYZ location. I just want to be able to, I'm here in Ashburn, Virginia. We've already figured this data center thing out. Why can't I just use the compute power that I have on-prem or right across the street at a secure data center? Why can't I just spin that up and collect data and crunch it at whatever scale that I need? And this idea of intelligence as a service is like, Dave, I don't really care. I just need to get actionable information, right? I have a problem. I need to have eyes on target. I need to know how many trucks have gone down this road, or something very simple. And that could mean carting millions of dollars worth of equipment that I can't cart around, or it could mean just accessing what you have and setting that up. And it's really, really appealing, but that has been a really big evolution. Have you seen just the change in attitudes towards this is our thing versus we just care about the result, or we care more about the result than we care about the infrastructure?
I think the infrastructure piece, we've had a lot of partners that have realized the ability to do things at the edge. And in the last, say, 3 years, it went from bring all your kit, your toys, your big compute, your satellite dishes, all those things you need to be, for the 4-man fire team that's at the very, very remote edge, to now we know we can mission plan on a cell phone and do some very intricate things like direct tasking on collection, can run processing, can generate reports on a very low weight compute environment. And then you've got things like Starlink that are out there, internet connectivity worldwide in a backpack. this whole concept of big hardware to, small hardware. We've seen a very fast evolution of our partners wrapping their brain around, all right, we don't need all this stuff. We can do this in a small form factor. However, the point of what you're making with Intel as a service, one of the things that we've spent a lot of time with educating, our partners on is looking at the buying model. And what do I mean? It used to be, hey, we are going to develop a thing. We want to have Intel reporting on this thing, but we are going to manage it under services, and we're going to have to buy data and buy this compute and buy all this stuff. It's like, time out. What you're buying is a result, right? Buy the result. So let's start pivoting these engagements to more like what we call, firm fixed price, to where the deliverable is this Intel report or this active API, generated, pushed Intel message report, whatever that's going into some command and control center downrange. Don't worry about all the compute data and man hours involved to get you to that point. You're buying really that every 8 hours, every 4 minutes, whatever the time period is, some sort of report on a detection around the globe. We've seen a big pivot in that model. And that's been part of what we have really focused on as well. Some of the prime contracts we hold today, that is literally the directive. We're buying Intel as a service. We know you'll go and handle the data procurement, which quite frankly is one of the more expensive parts of that type of mission, especially when you're buying commercial data. And then compute has gotten pretty cheap. And then there's all kinds of methods and things you can do behind the scenes to make that more efficient as well from a cost standpoint. And then labor is the best part of this, because when you're working under these, like I mentioned earlier, doing this commercial Intel as a service, you can bring in raw, uncleared talent with high-tech skills. Most of the young guys we're bringing out of college, they already have Python background. They already, they got degrees in math. They're very, very sharp folks. But now what we're doing is teaching them Intel. So apply this resident knowledge of coding and mathematics and all those things to Intel. And then we're seeing this evolution of, you now have a weaponized Intel analyst that's got a deep math and coding background. Oh, and at the same time, we're getting them cleared through other programs. So they're learning in real time. They're not just sitting in a think tank writing papers for 6 months waiting for their clearance to go through. They're doing real mission-derived work and getting that knowledge and getting cleared. And then we can take them and deploy them into a mission center somewhere and then rinse and repeat that model. A little bit of a shift from your question, but really wanted to hammer this home, is that I think the more that more government partners out there realize that they can get a better bang for their buck at a lower price with less mechanical nuance from a contract standpoint of just buy that Intel result. Let the companies, let the guys like us really handle the mechanics of what goes on behind the scenes. We're comfortable doing that. We run businesses at the end of the day, and we have to manage against profit. But at the end, buy that result. We will get you said result. And moreover, what they're finding is that our folks are getting a better result at a lower price much faster. That's a win. In my eyes, that's a win-win for everybody.
I think that approaches a quiet revolution in contracting, is thinking about what are we actually purchasing, who owns this thing, who's maintaining it, can we just focus on the end result? And then the pricing is more clear and it's much more scalable. It's like, I understand now, I can replicate this without going through a big lift about hardware and services. And a lot of the bigger organizations, they make their money mostly on the services. So maybe, there's an argument against that as a business owner, but from an actual needs perspective, it makes perfect sense. As a service model for intelligence, it seems to be like this quiet revolution. Very interesting to put in perspective. And I love what you're saying about getting bright talent in and then teaching them the gap. There's not going to be a school, unless they've gone to very particular schools while being in service, that they're going to learn the tradecraft piece or the Intel piece. So if you want to get really great talent, you have to where is the thing that I need? If somebody has math and they have coding skills, let's go get those people. Let's filter them for culture, for the desire to tackle this, shared mission requirements. Like if they're interested in that, this is a way better space to work on than say like tweaking the Facebook ads algorithm. Right. It's probably the same level of intellectual difficulty, but you're going to be one of thousands of people that just changed this way that ads get served to people. Not really much to write home about.
We had an example of that. We actually, during the Meta layoffs, I believe it was last winter that occurred, we picked up a PhD in aerospace engineering with a focus on orbitology. Pretty important when you're looking at the commercial space layer. And now he's all in on national security. He will never go back to working at a Facebook or an X.
You just get to work on more interesting problems, right? And things that where it's clear, definable impacts. You might not want to post those on Facebook and might not want to post that on LinkedIn. But to me, I look at people's CV and they're like, ex Google, ex Facebook. I'm like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that work for those companies of varied talents. But when I see somebody in a very fast growth, high technology, Intel space, I know that they had to be a very multidisciplinary person and they had to be probably pretty good. Otherwise, they wouldn't last too long because it's like high difficulty problems, very interesting problems to solve.
Yeah, and the Intel as a service piece to really hammer home the point I mentioned earlier about what are you passionate about, the people improvement, team improvement. One of the hardest things that not just my company, a lot of companies in our space are getting to available talent. This Intel as a service model really upguns a company's capability of bringing in sharp, uncleared folks and getting them that resonant experience to where now you no longer have a people problem because, it's always a chicken egg. You have to have someone cleared and they can't get the clearance unless they go through the process and it takes time. This cuts all that noise completely out. Now you're able to use vetted U.S. citizens, put them against really hard problems, get them the training they need, get them cleared in real time. The company is making money. It's not just an overhead burden. So this whole approach fixes so many problems from a technology and mission standpoint, but it fixes one of the biggest problems I think a lot of companies across the entire Intel and DoD sector have. It's the availability of talent. And by having these type of constructs where you have this unclassified component meets classified world, for a company our size, it gets really no better than that.
That's amazing insight. Definitely the hardest thing that any growth company experiences is how do I get talent in the door? How do I get the right talent in the door? How do I get the right talent to have the right culture fit and work really well as a team? Like you can only grow to the same extent that you grow your team, right? With capability, capacity, not just size. I mean, that's probably the most common thing that people look for is how can I get some leverage in growing my company? Is there a better approach to getting talent in the door? There's a really, really good insight for people that are listening. Dave, I want to future pace a little bit. Before we get out of here, what are you predicting or excited about in the next 6-12 months?
I think we're just getting started in the commercial space layer. I think you're going to see other players get involved. Space is hard and expensive. I think it's going to come in different ways and forms, though. You're going to have probably more sensors get put in orbit. We know we're tracking a whole bunch of companies that are all planned for 2024, 25 launches that have yet to put a single thing in air. So more is coming. There's going to need to be a massive boom on ground station and transport to consider how are we getting this information down from space. Space Command, SDA are investing a lot of money in that today with space-based comms and getting information to ground faster. I think there needs to be that commercial answer to that. There already is some today, like, Azure's kind of has that we work almost ground station model where and that's kind of opening up the aperture, if you will, to getting more stuff to ground. But I think as we put more in space, we're going to need more direct connectivity. And why do I mention that? Latency and speed are the critical issues right now. So if you take an image and you can't see that image until 3 to 4 to 6 hours to 8 hours later, is it really valuable? So for us, it's going to be a direct mission imperative for the commercial world, us included. How do we figure out how to get that information off the bird down the ground to make decision in that sub 3 minutes opposed to sub 2 hours? Because that's where from information's king, it's dominant. You have to have that and you have to have it fast. And right now we've got partners with commanding officers that I need to have joystick control of the bird. I need to be able to do everything I can possibly do to understand what is going on in a foreign remote area. And their speed is, I need it in 3 minutes. And right now that is virtually impossible. So there's a demand signal there to get that latency compressed. And moreover, there's going to have to be a tremendous amount of technology and new companies that come into place that are really cracking that code. To me, is what I see as the next big opportunity. We can't really affect what national does. They got their own priorities. They're putting their own assets in space at their speed and so on and so forth. Commercial has the ability, and they've already done it, to way below their capacity out in the water in terms of what they can collect and image and look at and listen to on a daily basis. I don't see that slowing down, because when the bullets start flying, it is my opinion, that it's going to be commercial that's going to rule the day. and you're going to need more information in the ground, and moreover, more resiliency. So being able to protect that commercial space layer as well, because albeit it's a commercial asset, it's going to be a critical asset when it comes to national security.
Yeah, there's definitely tangential problems and opportunities associated with that, right? So there's the physio cyber layer for SATCOM, and then there's the EW problems that are associated with any type of wireless communications. Then there's a really interesting one that we're predicting is the circular economy or the cleanup requirement. So looking at the full life cycle, which traditionally space hasn't had to address, the space economy hasn't had to address the total product life cycle. We just kind of let things stay up there as we need the space because the real estate is limited for a number of reasons. That's going to become more and more important, is looking at how something is taken down elegantly. Yeah, I fully agree. We've had a couple of friends of mine on the show talking about space economy. I'm really interested to learn more about that, but the same problems that we have in just wireless communications are essentially the same, but greatly accentuated. So a lot of the data transport and security layers on that. That's really interesting insight. A lot of movement and companies kind of going after that. So I'll probably be on the sidelines of just doing the electronics work, making stuff, but I am really curious about that space. Very interesting. Dave, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. Can you give us just a quick insight or words of wisdom to take us out?
I get asked a lot by folks that are wanting to try to do what we're doing, or folks that have already started growing a business in the defense intel space. And, this is a startup podcast, so I think I should leave it on a kind of a business building note. Don't try to do everything. Do the one thing that you're really good at and pour a lot of energy into it. And as I said earlier, really understanding the problem, I think, has been a big part of our success, because you only have so much energy you can exert in the course of the day when you're building a company, because you're literally working, 80, 90-hour weeks for the first couple of years. If you're going to invest your time, make sure it's something that you really know. You can never be too close to mission. And moreover, probably I would catch some heat from this from our pure product guys. But for me, I was pretty risk adverse, which sounds weird if you're going to start a company, but do something that you know that on day one, you're going to get paid for. If you can start bringing in just a get one customer to give you $1, that you would be amazed how your confidence and your ability to go and try and do other like things within what you want to be as you grow up as a company, you'll kind of let your guard down and be more aggressive in going after new targets. We were humble beginnings. I started this whole company with a bonus that I got from my old firm right when I left, which wasn't a whole lot, but it was enough to kind of pay the bills for a month and wait for that first invoice to get paid. And then from there, we kind of grew it as 1 to 2 to 5 to 20 to 80 people in the first couple of years. And I think in the end, it was because we were doing work we truly understood and a mission we truly understood. We weren't trying to build the next novel thing and trying to figure out who was going to buy it. We understood, we really got down to the core of what are the current needs and problems of a customer we understand. And that's all my focus was directed to. And then from there, everything else kind of took care of itself. Once you get to that point where you've got that good solid base of that recurring business and kind of paying for the bills and you're growing at a nice clip, start taking some real good risks then. There are very few people in the defense and intel space. I think the list is exponentially longer of those who failed than those that have succeeded on taking those moonshots within that first 12 to 18 months. So if you really want to make it in this industry and have that enduring name and one that really it's just not flashy tech, but it's something that you're doing something that matters, you've got to be in the mission center. And if you're not that person, but you've got the need and desire to do something in defense and intel, find a partner, find somebody that believes in your vision, your strategy, that really can speak all the acronym soup that comes out of the military and defense world. It can really help you translate what is truly affecting mission, and then figure out what is those things you're going to build or those people you're going to hire that affect positive change in that mission. It's really not terribly complicated at the end of the day. It's just kind of taking all the external noise of running a company, putting the blinders on, filtering that out and saying, all right, this is what we want to be when we grow up, and not really deviating from that. But how do you know what you want to be? You got to understand the problem. And if you do that, then I think the rest, it will come. Just put in the reps, sit back and wait. It'll come to you.
That's phenomenal. Thank you again, Dave.
Hey, Callye, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
My name is Callye Keen, and this has been the Startup Defense.